She chuckled. Cheating is just part of modern life. I nodded, kept quiet, and made my exit plan while she slept with someone else. When I first met Rachel at a friend's engagement party in Portland, I didn't think much of it. She had that magnetic presence, the kind of woman who lit up a room without even trying. Loud laugh, bold opinions, glass always full, and stories that didn't seem to end. I'm more reserved by nature, quiet, observant, content to sit back and listen. Still, that night we somehow ended up on the balcony, talking until 2 a.m. about everything. Our careers, our views on life, and whether marriage still made sense in this generation. She said it did, but only if both people agreed on the same terms. At the time, I assumed she meant honesty and respect. I work in IT. Steady, predictable, not much room for surprise. Rachel was in marketing for a lifestyle brand. Thrived on chaos, deadlines, and being constantly stimulated. We came from different worlds, but that difference felt refreshing. She pulled me into last-minute concerts and food truck meetups. I kept her grounded with reminders about taxes and unpaid parking tickets. In the beginning, it worked. She used to tell me I anchored her. I'd say she stopped me from becoming robotic. 2 years in, we signed the lease on a cozy apartment near downtown. I handled most of the rent. Her income was inconsistent, commission-based, and I didn't mind carrying more of the weight. To me, that was love. She once talked about going to Bali for our anniversary. I believed her, but things started to shift. Her phone, once always face up, began staying face down. More girls' trips, but no shared photos like before. When I asked how they went, she'd give me a vague chill and move on. One night, I made dinner, chicken piccata, her favorite. She texted she had a quick client meeting. I waited. 1 hour passed, then 2. When she finally walked in, she smelled like a cologne I didn't wear and laughed like everything was fine. I asked her, "Are you seeing someone else?" She didn't hesitate. No panic, no guilt, not even surprise. She tossed her bag on the counter and said, "Oh my God, are we seriously doing this? You really think cheating is that big of a deal? Get over it. Monogamy is outdated. You're just not evolved." That sentence, cheating is normal now, hit harder than any confession would have. Not because she cheated, but because she genuinely didn't see it as wrong. I didn't shout or storm out. I didn't beg for her love or explain how much it hurt. Something inside me just quietly shifted. I nodded and said, "Maybe you're right." She rolled her eyes and walked off, humming to herself like it was just another Tuesday. From that moment on, I stopped trying. I stopped trying to make her love me the way I loved her. I no longer asked for honesty. I stopped hoping for change. Instead, I paid attention. I observed. I prepared. Rachel didn't change, still coming home late, still vague, still acting like I didn't exist. But I had changed. I wasn't her partner anymore. I became a quiet observer, a silent record keeper. I didn't accuse. I didn't argue. I started a new folder on my personal hard drive labeled Rachel. Inside went screenshots of suspicious messages left open on her laptop, Uber receipts that contradicted her client stories, hotel bookings on our shared credit card. I took notes of the names, Ethan from the gym, Derek from work, always mentioned too casually. One night, she brought someone home. I was supposed to be at the office late, but a last-minute system error had me return early. I heard them through the hallway, laughing, pouring wine. I didn't enter. I simply turned around, went back to my car, and sat in silence. The next morning, she claimed she'd spent the night watching Succession. I didn't challenge it. I just added the date to the file. I started restructuring my life quietly. I called our leasing office and inquired about removing her from the lease. Since everything was under my name, they said it wouldn't be a problem. I asked about changing the locks, same answer. I moved my direct deposit from our joint account to a new one she couldn't see. She never noticed, or didn't care. Then came the Bali trip. She asked if we could use the savings for a wellness retreat, said it was for mental clarity and networking. I said sure. I transferred every cent to my own account and used it to pay off my car. When she followed up about it, I said the hotel required her card. She shrugged and said she'd ask her mom. In her mind, she thought she'd created the perfect setup. An open relationship she didn't need to confess. A man who never questioned her. A lifestyle propped up by someone still trying to build a future. But I wasn't building anymore. I was dismantling. Then came the weekend that finalized it all. She said she was off to Seattle for work. I told her to have a great trip. The moment she left, I packed every last piece of her life from the apartment. Clothes, shoes, makeup, even the endless marketing freebies. I boxed everything carefully, labeled it, folded her favorite hoodie on top. I left a note on the back of the grocery receipt she always mocked me for using. You said cheating is normal. So is breaking up. Don't worry. I'm just evolving. I deactivated her key, changed her access, and handed the boxes to the doorman with instructions. Then I spent the rest of the weekend alone in the apartment. Peaceful, quiet, sipping coffee and watching the sun move through the windows. She returned Sunday evening around 7:30, earlier than expected. I was a few blocks away at a cafe waiting. Right on cue, my phone buzzed. First a call, then several texts, then a voicemail. Why won't my key work? Did you seriously change the locks? Where are you? What is going on? The confusion in her voice gradually turned into panic. This isn't funny. Let me in. I'm standing out here with my suitcase. If this is about that dumb fight, we can talk. But there had been no fight, and I had no words left. The doorman followed protocol. He met her in the lobby, pointed to the stack of boxes, and handed her the note. According to him, she read it twice. Then she just stood there, silent. For the first time in 3 years, Rachel didn't have a comeback. That night, she reached me via email. It was long, full of accusations. How heartless I was, how she felt ambushed, how I never gave her a chance. She wrote, "You should have fought for us." I read it twice. Not because I felt guilty, but because I was amazed at how someone could twist reality that much. I replied with one sentence. "You said cheating is normal. So is breaking up." She went quiet after that. A couple of weeks later, I started hearing things through friends. Rachel was staying with her cousin near the train line. She was missing meetings, losing clients. Word had gotten around at her job. She wasn't focused. Meanwhile, I was waking up in peace. No tension, no guessing games, no manipulation. I cooked again. I started jogging. I slowly began seeing someone. Someone who actually listened when I spoke. Do I miss Rachel? No. I miss the version of her I thought existed. The woman from the balcony in Portland who claimed to believe in partnership and understanding. But her version of understanding only went one way, freedom for her, commitment from me. She called cheating evolution. I call it cowardice wrapped in trendy excuses. Love doesn't survive by lowering standards. It thrives when both people show up fully, honestly, and equally. She wanted modern love with none of the modern accountability. Now, she rides a train to a job she barely enjoys, probably telling herself I blindsided her. Maybe she believes it. But the truth? I simply let her live by her own logic. She told me to evolve. So I did. I never responded to her email again. I had said what I needed to say, and anything more would have just opened the door for her to twist things back in her favor. The peace that followed her absence was louder than any argument we'd ever had. The apartment, once chaotic and filled with her energy, was now calm. I had space to think, to breathe, to exist without feeling like I was constantly being made small to make room for her chaos. At first, it felt strange waking up to silence, like I was waiting for her voice to fill the hallway, for the thud of her heels or the jingle of her keys. But then I realized, I wasn't waiting for her. I was waiting for that version of myself to dissolve completely. And it did. A few weeks passed. I never blocked her. I didn't need to. She didn't call again. But mutual friends, even the ones who had stayed quiet during the downfall of our relationship, slowly started reaching out. Some with apologies. Some with updates. Apparently, Rachel was spinning a narrative that I had abandoned her out of nowhere. That I was emotionally unavailable and rigid. That I refused to communicate. I didn't bother correcting the record. Anyone who knew me, and knew her, could piece the truth together without my help. And the ones who believed her blindly, They were never really my friends to begin with. One evening, I bumped into her best friend Sasha at a grocery store. We weren't close, but we were always cordial. She looked at me with a kind of quiet understanding and said, "You know, she's still trying to figure out how she lost control." I nodded but said nothing. There was nothing left to dissect. Rachel hadn't lost control. She'd never had it. What she lost was the illusion that she could keep living on borrowed trust forever. I had simply stopped offering it. What Rachel didn't realize, what people like her rarely realize, is that the damage isn't in the cheating itself. It's in the erosion of safety. The moment someone you love stops being a place of peace and starts feeling like a question you're afraid to ask, the relationship is already dying. I gave her time. I gave her space. I gave her the benefit of the doubt more times than I can count. But I wasn't a fool. I was patient. That's a different kind of strength altogether. Months passed. Seasons changed. I filled my time with things I had let go of during our relationship. I started reading again. Really reading, not just scrolling headlines. I picked up cooking, not out of necessity, but because I wanted to. I reconnected with my brother, made time for friends I hadn't seen in years, and slowly began feeling like myself again. Not the version she said was boring or predictable, but the man who found joy in consistency, who believed in effort, who didn't need chaos to feel alive. Then one afternoon, nearly 6 months after she left, I received a letter. A handwritten one. The envelope had no return address, but I recognized her handwriting immediately. I hesitated before opening it, half expecting more guilt, more justification, another attempt to twist the truth in her favor. But it wasn't like that. Not exactly. It was 3 pages long. She wrote about the apartment, how quiet it felt without my routines, how she never realized how many small things I handled until she had to do them herself. She mentioned how her cousin was kind but distant, and how she'd been riding the train every day wondering if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. She didn't ask to come back. Not directly, but the tone was clear: regret. Not just for how things ended, but for never recognizing what she had while it was hers. She wrote, "You made love look easy. I made it feel hard. And now I don't know how to unlearn that." I sat with that sentence for a while. I even considered replying. But what was there left to say? I couldn't teach her what love was. I had already shown her. She just didn't care enough to value it at the time. I didn't respond. I folded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and tucked it away in the bottom drawer of my desk. Not out of sentimentality, but as a reminder of how far I had come, of who I used to be, of how easily we can be misled when we mistake chaos for passion, inconsistency for freedom, and emotional neglect for independence. These days, I'm still seeing someone new. It's not intense, not dramatic. It's calm, honest, full of mutual curiosity. We talk about little things like what makes us feel safe and what our favorite breakfasts were growing up. We don't compete. We don't try to win. We meet each other in the middle. Sometimes we laugh about how underrated peace is in relationships. And every now and then, when she asks about my past, I tell her bits and pieces. Not because I want her to judge Rachel, but because I want her to know that I earned the calm we now have. Love doesn't need to be loud to be real. It doesn't need to survive chaos to prove its worth. It just needs 2 people willing to show up fully, every day, with intention and respect. Rachel once told me to evolve. She thought that meant accepting betrayal as part of modern love. But real evolution is choosing peace when you've been through war. It's walking away not because you stopped loving someone, but because they stopped loving you in a way that was safe. She taught me what I would never tolerate again. And for that, oddly enough, I'm grateful. Not for her, but for the clarity that came after. It's strange how endings don't always feel like crashing doors or shouted arguments. Sometimes they're quiet. So quiet that you don't realize the moment you've finally moved on until you're already living in the after. That's what it became for me. And after Rachel, after the chaos, after the ache of loving someone who made you feel replaceable. My life didn't suddenly become perfect, but it became mine again, and that meant everything. There were still moments when I'd walk by a spot we used to frequent or hear a song that played during one of those early nights together. I didn't flinch anymore. I didn't feel the urge to relive it or dissect it or ask myself where I went wrong. I knew where it broke. I saw every fracture form in real time. What used to be painful clarity had turned into wisdom. I didn't hate her. I didn't wish her harm. I just no longer wished her back. That, for me, was healing. Some mutual friends asked if I'd ever speak to her again, just for closure. I told them I already had closure. It wasn't in a conversation or an apology. It was in the silence that followed my final words. You said cheating is normal. So is breaking up. There's no better punctuation than a full stop you place yourself. I think people who chase closure from those who hurt them often don't realize that they're just delaying their peace. Waiting for someone who broke you to heal you is like asking fire to put itself out. Rachel faded. Not all at once, but gradually. Her name stopped coming up in conversations. Her friends stopped checking in. Eventually, she stopped existing in my day-to-day. And I didn't notice when exactly it happened. That's how true endings work. They don't come with announcements. They settle in like dusk after a long, hot day. Cool, quiet, and undeniable. I heard she eventually moved to the East Coast. A job transfer, maybe a fresh start. Good for her. I hope she figures herself out. I hope she finds someone who matches what she truly wants, assuming she figures out what that even is. But I also hope that person knows their worth well enough not to shrink for her, the way I did once. As for me, I stayed. Same city, same apartment. But everything feels different now. I filled my life with purpose. I volunteer on weekends, coach a youth coding club on Wednesdays, and on quiet evenings, I read on the same balcony where Rachel and I once sat talking about modern love. It doesn't haunt me. If anything, it reminds me how far I've come. The woman I'm seeing now, her name's Elise, is different from Rachel in every way that matters. She listens, not just to my words but to the silences between them. She doesn't glamorize chaos. She finds beauty in rhythm, in reliability. I told her once about my past. Not in bitter detail, but enough for her to understand the lines on my heart. She didn't try to fix it. She just held it. That's all I ever needed. Not grand gestures or fireworks. Just someone willing to stay present when it gets quiet. Looking back, I'm not bitter. I'm grateful. Rachel taught me that love without respect is just performance. That infidelity dressed up as freedom is just selfishness pretending to be progressive. She called cheating normal. I call it a shortcut for people who lack the courage to be honest. She said I needed to evolve. And I did. Just not in the way she meant. Evolution, to me, was learning how to walk away without setting myself on fire for warmth. It was reclaiming my sense of self. It was choosing peace without apology. It was understanding that love isn't proved by how much you endure, but by how much you refuse to settle for less than you give. So no, I don't miss Rachel. I don't miss the chaos. I don't miss being loved conditionally. I miss nothing. And that, finally, is freedom.